everybody, and welcome to the 22nd Central Texas African American Family Support Conference. Even though we only see your names, some of you might see your faces. We're glad you're here with us this morning, and you are in for a real treat with Miss Chantia Johnson. And I'm your moderator for today. I'm Vicki Coffey, and we're just excited again that you're joining us for Overcoming Grief and Learning to Live Again. That's what this conference is about, right? It's about learning how to overcome things that we've dealt with and just to get our lives moving in the right direction. So while we again wait for more people to come, please put in the chat, Austin, Texas represented in the house this morning. Good morning, ATX. Put in the chat with us where you're from. Yes, DJ Hella Yella is awesome. Yep. So another question, what brings you joy? What is it that makes you smile, that makes your heart dance, that just excites you? What brings you joy? So if you can type in the chat this morning, Maynard, Texas in the house. What brings you joy, Tyler, Texas? Yes. Houston, H-Town, we see you, we see you. We are so glad that you're representing from all over. We got a little shout out from Chantier on that H-Town, I think. Was that it? Welcome, McAllen. Yes. Okay, come on down from down south. We love it. We love it. Yes, thank you. Abilene in the house, Athens, all these A's in West Texas representing. Go ahead. Yes, quality time with family. I love this activity in the chat. So we encourage you guys to keep this chat going throughout the session. Let's send encouragement to our lovely presenter as she gets started with us. Let's see what else. So just a few housekeeping things. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, United Way of Greater Austin. So thank you all for making this session possible and for supporting the conference. So just a few housekeeping things, items that we need to go over. First of all, y'all know this is a safe, supportive space. So we want to make sure we're respectful and we create an inclusive environment. And a reminder, you guys are already doing this. I have to tell myself to mute when I'm not talking at all times. And use the chat function. You guys already caught on to that and you're already doing it in Hoover. I think y'all have mastered Hoover. This is day 2. But any questions that you might have for our lovely presenter, if you could please use the Q&A function in Hoover. And then if you're feeling overwhelmed, we're talking about a lot and there's so much that can come up for us as we just experience this session. And so if you feel like you need to talk with someone during the session, please call 512-472-4357. That's also 512-472-HELP for you guys that didn't know that. That's your little fact for the day. You want to press 1 and then press 1 again for immediate emotional support. And then between sessions, you can visit our comfort suite where there's also another place, another safe haven, and you'll find the comfort suite in the community tab under the main navigation in Hoover. Also, you know, you've heard this, if this isn't your first session, if it is, welcome. Glad you joined us on day 2. But if this isn't your first session, you've heard this, we have a number of surveys. And if you're registered to get CEUs, please check the chat. Lisa's gonna make sure and put the CEUs and the chat links in the box for us, or put the CEU links in the box. The first link is your sign-in sheet. If you don't sign in, you weren't here. So make sure and click the sign-in link in the chat for the CEUs. That's a requirement. After the workshop, there's gonna be another link for CEU evaluations. And we also want you to click on that link for a short evaluation to make sure you tell us what you think about this session. Then you're gonna be able to, once you complete the evaluation, it's gonna take you to a link where you can get your CEU certificate, and we know how important that is. And then lastly, the third link is the session evaluation, the general evaluation, where you'll be able to take a survey and have the opportunity to win a $25 gift card. So all these incentives, I love it. Also, just a reminder, we got merch, y'all. We got merch. So you need to check out the conference merchandise website. That is ctaafsc.com/shop. That will be placed in the chat as well. Go buy some merch, support the conference, and throughout the year, you can rock your little beanie or your hoodie or whatever it is and be cute, you know? So be sure and check out the store. Whew, I think I've covered all those points that I'm required to. So now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming our beautiful presenter, Ms. Chantia Johnson. Chantier is currently pursuing her associate's degree in business, and she will be attending Concordia University for a bachelor's in pre-law, y'all. Okay. Her dream is to become a malpractice attorney for underprivileged and marginalized communities. So now just sit back, relax. We're going to enjoy this presentation. We're going to learn. We're going to encourage each other. There, now I'm supposed to turn off my thing, and mine's beeping. So we'll be back after we watch this presentation for a live Q&A session. We already have the lovely Chantia Johnson in the room. She'll be ready to answer all your questions. So without further ado, let's get it started.
Hey,
Hey.
hello everybody, wherever you're tuning in from. I pray that you've had an amazing morning. My name is Chantia Johnson, and it is such an honor to be here to present you guys with how I have survived grief and how I continue to overcome, right? I continue to overcome the different stages of grief. So before we begin, I want everybody to take 3 deep breaths, okay? The count of three, we're going to do 3 deep, long breaths. One, two, three. I like to breathe deeply whenever I am entering a new setting. I like to breathe deeply whenever I need to ground myself. I'm super excited to present to you guys. And so I want to be sure that I am able to give you my full on best presentation because I think it's really important that people know um, the process of grief, the different stages of grief, and as a lived experience survivor of grief, how I have overcome and how I have really championed this hurdle in life that I never expected to experience, right? Because nobody asks to lose anything. Um, I think that we all enter this world just pure and just expecting the best out of what life has to offer us, overcoming grief and learning to live an abundant life after loss. My name is Chantier Johnson, and I am the founder of Vista V LLC, which translates in English to live your life. Who am I, right? You know my name. So I'm from Seattle, Washington, born and raised. I graduated from Ingram High School in 2012 with an interbaccalaureate certificate in psychology, which basically just means that when I went to college, I went to college with psychology credits. And in high school, I dreamt of being a psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist. I didn't know the difference, but I wanted to listen to people talk all day about their problems. And a lot of people use empathy a lot. And so I am going to use that word to describe myself, but I'm not an empath. The reason I say that is because over the years, I have learned that in order to empathize with people, I had to really objectify those feelings because I would take them home and I would sleep with them, I would wake up with them, sometimes have nightmares because I took on the emotions and feelings of other people. And so I no longer um, I no longer say I'm an empath. I empathize and I understand a lot of what life has to give and take. Um, I went to college in Decatur, Georgia, Agnes Scott, in 2012. After I graduated high school, I went directly straight into college. Um, First generation college student, so I knew nothing about the world of college or university or what it would entail, but I was excited. I knew that college was for me, right? I had worked so hard in middle school, I had worked so hard in high school to be sure that I got into a really good college. And so I remember back then I was encouraged to actually go ahead and apply for a a small private liberal arts college. As one of my advisors said, it would be better for me to be in a small classroom setting. And so I did that. And I am blessed to say that I did go to Agnes Scott College. It's all women's liberal arts. And I went on a full ride. And so that was a blessing for me. As you can see in this picture, I have two beautiful boys. Ezekiel is the small one on my lap, and Romeo is the bigger boy, and they are my world. Everything I do now revolves around my sons, and I try my best to be the best mother as I can be. Recently, I had to take a break from school again because I really take my mental health seriously. And when I find myself needing a break, I give myself that break. But I am pursuing a bachelor's in business administration. And after I'm done with that BA, I will be going on to pursue my pre-law degree in malpractice, and then eventually I will go to law school, and the show will go on from there. But until then, I am a scholar, I am a mother, and I am a lived experience grief survivor. So, what is grief, right? Grief is the state that a person is in after they experience a loss. And so I think it's really important that people know that you can grieve more than just the loss of a family member. That's something that I never really thought about prior to my lived experience. I always thought that grief was just the death of a loved one. So before I went to college, I had lost a friend to gun violence. I had experienced so much trauma in my early adult life. And so I didn't realize that I was in a state of grief post my first year of college. But I knew that I had changed. I knew that I was not the girl that I had left my home city as. I was not her. And so I started doing a lot of research about grief. I started to really dive into what grief was and what it looked like. Um, and so, again, a loss can be family, friends, a job, and most important to me is the loss of one's identity, which is something that I experienced firsthand at the age of 19. And it really affected everything. After my first year of college, I decided that I was going to drop out, which I did. And this was 2013, and I decided to become an AmeriCorps Vista. And so I went on to work in a very small rural town in Eastern Washington. And so I had, again, left home from Seattle. I had moved to Georgia. And then after realizing that college was really hard, and I'm not talking about academically, I mean socially, I mean emotionally, I mean spiritually. I had $500 the whole year, my whole first year of my undergrad, because that was the refund I got after paying off my dorm, which was $10,000. And so, yeah, college was paid for. Um, but I come from a poor family. And so my parents didn't know that I would need financial assistance. I don't think that they really had the time to think that far ahead, being that there was seven of us in my immediate family. I have three older brothers, three younger sisters, two half sisters, and so I grew up with a really, really big family. And They just didn't know how to support me throughout my first year of college. And so that was very difficult for me. And I remember just sleeping all day, um, some days after class, my first year of college, and I didn't know why. And so I decided as a 18, 19-year-old woman that I needed to see a therapist. And so I started going to therapy my second semester of college, and my depression and anxiety had got so bad that I just made the decision that it was not for me to be there, and I needed to be closer to my family. And so then that's where I really embarked on um, rediscovering who I was. And so, again, a loss can be a family, a friend, a job, and identity. So, right now, I want to take a breather and just pose a question. Can you think of one person you lost? As you think about that person, I really want you to breathe, because sometimes I find myself holding my breath when I think about the losses that I've endured of my family members. It affects my breathing pattern. Sometimes it affects my body. I get sensations in my feet sometimes as a grief reaction. And I've learned how to really take things slowly in remembering someone that I've lost. So in this slide, you see two names. One name is Destiny C. Johnson, and the other is Bernice C. Porter. Both of them are my family members, and they passed within a month of each other. My sister passed away February 10th, 2018, and my grandmother took her last breath on March 25th, 2018. My sister passed 6 days after the birth of my first son, Romeo, as you've seen in the first slide. Um, and I was 6 days postpartum as I ran through the hospital was in cardiac arrest, and they had to perform CPR for 15 minutes in order to bring back a pulse. My grandmother had cancer that she had been battling for, I would say, 3 years. Um, but it had progressed so quickly that there was nothing else they could do. My grandma, I laugh because my grandmother was a woman of faith. My grandmother refused chemo. It hurt. That's what she said out of her own mouth. She said that chemo hurt. And so, as her family, we had to honor her wishes. She was the last matriarch on my mother's side. My granny had passed away in 2016. And yeah, both of their deaths continue to infect and affect me to this day. Um, I find that cancer um, takes more family from me than anything else. Natural death, car accidents, even gun violence. My family has passed from cancer a majority of the time. Ironically, I had just lost my uncle a month ago, November 18th, 2021. Reginald Greenwood took his last breath and is no longer with us due to cancer. And so, as I present to you, as a lived experience grief survivor, I am saying I'm not okay every day. Every day is not easy, but I honor my family by sharing the truth about grief. Can you remember a time that you lost a job or had to quit a job and you felt this sense of sadness and emptiness, or even as though you have no purpose? That can be a sign of grief, missing what was, not knowing what will be. Many people suffer from the grief of losing a job as well. And I tell myself all the time, if the plan doesn't work, change the plan, but not the goal. Because although one thing may have been a part of your day to day, and it may have filled you up, it may have fulfilled you, it made you feel like you belonged, maybe that thing was meant to be lost so that you can find something else that gives you purpose. So we've talked about job loss, we've talked about losing a family or a friend. Now let's talk about identity, okay? Can you reflect on your 20-year-old self? Maybe you even 5 years ago. I want you to think about that person. What does that person look like? What do they like to watch on TV? What do they wear? As you think about that person, do you get a sense of sadness? Do you get a sense of confusion? Um, do you get a sense of melancholy? What is the feeling that you have when you think about your identity over the last 5 years, even this last year? Um, think about it. The reason why I bring this up is because I lost my identity at a very young age. There was a point in my life when I was 20 years old where I lost my memory. I had dissociated from all of the trauma and all of. And the thing about dissociating is that I remember the event. I remember everything that happened that day. Um, but I also remember just not knowing who my sister was. I remember she had to call my older brother, and I remember being afraid of my older brother because I had been in situations, which I'll share later, that made me fearful of men. And my brother was really, really hurt about that, but it wasn't intentional. Um, I had lost my memory, and I had to um, really fight to be where I am today, to be here presenting to you, to be here sharing my truth, to be here being as transparent as I can be because grief almost took me out. I was so upset at how my life had gone post high school because I did not expect to drop out of college. Um, that I completely just dissociated from the person that I had grown up as completely, to the point to where I no longer wanted people to call me Chantier. I actually had picked up a nickname, street name as some people call it, but I went as Bonnie. So for the last at least 5 to 7 years, people, when I introduce myself, hi, my name is Bonnie, call me Bonnie. Prefer to be called preferred name Bonnie, because it made me feel better about who I had become. Because Chantier, it just didn't feel like Chantier was no longer there, and so I talk a lot about identity loss as well, because it's a real thing, and has happened to me. Um, I also experienced what they call prolonged grief. And what that means is that my reaction to the loss of my identity lasted more than a year, right? So, like I mentioned before, it lasted me about 5 to 7 years to where I would get irritated if someone called me Chantier. That's a reaction to that identity loss. I was emotionally triggered by someone calling me Chantier because I just didn't identify as her. As weird as that sounds, I didn't identify as that girl anymore. I felt like a totally different person post high school. Um, um, so in this picture, you see my grandmother, excuse me, my firstborn. So again, this was a month after losing my little sister and right before my grandmother passed away. What is bereavement? Bereavement is the state a person is in after the loss. In this picture, I was a bereaved sister. I'm smiling, um, but in my body, immense sadness, immense sadness. Um, I had experienced something that a lot of people have or will. People don't talk about it a lot, but the loss of a sibling cuts deep, especially being the oldest sister. I felt a sense of responsibility to keeping my little sister alive, and I couldn't. And so a bereaved person can be smiling, they can be laughing even, um, but it's really the internal um, state that that person is in.
Chantier, we couldn't see any of those pictures, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I think that they're having technical difficulties. Just 1 second.
While we're waiting, hopefully they'll come back on again soon, but I just want to step in and remind people, whew, this is a very heavy topic, and to just remember to breathe. And I just can't go a whole lot further without thanking Chantier for her time and being here with us today, being brave, being so transparent, and just sharing your journey with us. You're definitely are a survivor of grief and of many things, and so we thank you for being here with us today, and we look forward to our Q&A section session. So hopefully we'll get the video back and up started again soon.
Miss Vicky, I don't see at the bottom of my screen any place for a chat. It doesn't say chat anywhere. Where can I find that?
Are you joining us in Hoover or on the Zoom?
I thought it was in Hoover.
Okay, because if you're in Zoom, then that you wouldn't see the chat, I think. But in Hoover, it should be on your right-hand side. It is on mine, on the right-hand side of the screen, on a menu that says Q&A, polls, and chat, and community at the top, kind of the top right.
Hmm. Okay.
It's been
I'm
a
so
wonderful
sorry.
day for me.
If
Really,
someone knows how to help with that, if you can
I
drop that in the chat, that would be very
hey,
helpful.
sometimes I get unhinged, sometimes I get unnerved. I'm not crazy, and no, I don't have issues as people call it. I just am learning how to cope with not only poverty, but with having this intense bereavement in my body. Um, and how do I get through that? And so Black Mamas ATX has been a wonderful resource for me here in Austin, Texas, and I'm just so grateful that I was able to begin um, my my deeper dive into really healing my inner woman, so that I can be here today, sharing with you guys how you can live an abundant life, and how you can um, overcome without forgetting or honoring a loved one or old self or job, because I think it's really important that people respect even people who mourn a job, um, because not everyone is able to, leave behind something that meant something to them and forget about it, right? I don't believe in forgetting. I believe in overcoming daily overcoming the battles and the hurdles that grief and bereavement can bring upon a person. And so this is really a map that I would say of what prolonged grief looks like to me. Okay. Um, so the first stage, I would say, would be the first year where you start like going through the cycle of the stages, and not linearly, but just like this, every day is different. And that's that first year, right? And then you have the second year where I experience my belief system kind of changing. I've always believed in the Lord, and I still do to this day. But I just started to look at my journey less religiously and more spiritually, because here I have social anxiety at this point, which I didn't have prior. Um, I also have clinical depression, where I'll have episodes, and it can hit randomly, where months at a time I just don't want to talk to people. I don't want to interact. I don't want to answer my phone. I don't want to text anybody. I don't even want to get on social media. And so I went through that, and then the second year I started losing a lot of relationships with people who I love dearly, and I say love as in present tense because I love them dearly. I just didn't have the capacity to maintain the relationships. And then the third year on, I started to notice that my emotional state started to change. I started to get a little stronger in my walk. I wasn't as fragile as I was in my first year. My physical health started to improve, but it took a lot of intentionality. I had to get out of bed. I wasn't doing that my first year. I wasn't turning on the light in my first year. I wasn't going outside. Even walking on the street caused me anxiety and panic in my body. And so in that third year, I really felt I was healing, but it took a lot more effort. Um, I noticed that my mental state was improving, but I was having more of the morning stage, where I wanted to celebrate my sister and my grandma, and I wanted to look at pictures of my little sister, and I wanted to look at pictures of me even in high school and middle school, and my baby pictures, because I wanted to relate to that girl that I was prior to the loss of my identity. The third year, I started building new friendships, but I had to be very, very cautious and conscious about the type of people that I was interacting with. Um, Instead of just being free for all, I'm going to be friends with whomever, as I was growing up. I had to discern and really take my time with saying, hey, we're friends. I had to hang out a couple times. I had to really feel like our lives fit. And they had to know that I was a grief survivor and that I was a bereaved sister, in order for them to have the capacity of being my friend. Um, and family. In my third year, I noticed that, and even now, we're in our fourth year now, but I noticed that my family started to really talk more about the loss of my grandmother and my little sister, and we were able to connect more, right? As grief survivors, we were able to look at each other, and cry together. And I was riding with my older brother. I actually just got back in town this weekend from visiting my family in Seattle, because my uncle passed away last month, um, November 2021. And I found myself um, really just connecting with my older brother. And that hadn't happened in my first year. I was really numb. We were really numb, and we didn't know how to be around each other and love each other actively as a verb. It was really hard. So here's my chart of prolonged grief and kind of what it looks like as a woman, as a mother, and um, as a scholar, because I found it really important that I track these things, and I studied grief and I studied myself, and I took note of what was working and what wasn't working in my second year. I was using a lot of different substances, and I'll share that more to cope. And so, yeah, that's what my chart of prolonged grief looks like. So, stages of grief. Yay, my favorite part of talking about grief is the different stages that one may experience. And again, it's not linear, which means that it's not going to go like this. It's going to be like a roller coaster. So if you're experiencing that now, just know that it's normal. At least for me, and anybody that I've talked to, it has been normal. Um, so yeah, this is my mom. She has the glasses on. There's my little niece, Amari. That's me, and that is my baby boy, Romeo. This was in 2018, and this was actually right after my sister passed away. And then you have my eldest brother, Dietrich, standing right behind me. We're smiling, but in my head, I'm thinking we're running away. Um, so the first stage I want to talk about is the shock and the denial, right? Looking at the picture that I just showed you in the previous slide, you would think that we're on a happy family vacation. Um, but in retrospect, I believe that we were in a state of shock. Okay. February 10th, we pulled the plug. She was on life support. And even to this day, I go through shock and denial. It's been nearly 4 years, and I still can't believe, wow, my sister passed away. I still can't believe, wow, my grandmother passed away. And so you can go through shock and denial after a loss of a job. You can go through shock and denial after a loss of a relationship. If the person is still living, it's so I can't believe this. What? This is not real. This can't be happening, right? That's that shock denial. There's no way. Even when I lost my memory and I was going through my dissociated phases, I was shocked. I was like, what? I'm so I'm a scholar, okay? I like to learn, I like to read, I like to I mean, how could someone with this capacity to hold so much wisdom and knowledge be how could my mental health be deteriorating, right? I went through it with all of those different categories of loss. And so I know shock and denial all too well. Here we have bargaining. This is where how I explain bargaining is really being like, God, if you just bring my sister back, if we can, God, if there's any way you can invent a time machine, we can go back and we could bring my grandmother back, or if there's any way that God, if there's any way that you can just help me to be that girl I was before I went to college. If you could help me not leave home and go to college. If I could go to community college, stay in state, like anything, God. I bargained with God. I bargained with myself, Chantier, if you just get sober, right? If you just get sober, then you're gonna go back to school. You know, I just bargained a lot in my grief stage, and I still bargain to this day. Like, oh God, if only you could just bring my sister back, so that we didn't have to feel this. intense sadness. If you could just rewind time, God. And so that, as you go through your grief, you'll find that you bargain a lot, and that's really normal when it comes to grief and when it comes to even mourning, celebrating their life. You'll bargain. You'll listen to that song that they loved, and you'll say, oh, if only they could come back. You could be mourning them and just bargaining and wishing that things could be different. And that's okay. It's okay to wish things could be different. I get it. Guilt. The guilt of not being able to save my sister, not being able to convince my grandmother to go to chemo. I hold that in my body sometimes. I hold my breath sometimes. That's why I encourage everyone to breathe. Breathe. You can do it. It's okay if you do feel guilty. You're valid in that. But don't hold it in your body. Don't release it. Release that guilt. Release that shame. Shame keeps us from living. It keeps us from going outside or turning on the light or brushing our teeth. It's okay to forgive yourself. Anger. Oh, anger. Ah! Sorry, I didn't mean to yell that way, but I mean, anger is so real. I mean, my mother can explain that better than I can because for some odd reason, I'm not easily angered. But I mean, I remember the moment that they came in and told us that my sister had no brain activity in her scan after they revived her, and I was so mad. Me and her twin sister ran to her hospital room, and I remember going, no. Ugh, I was so angry. 4 years in my prolonged grief, do I get angry? Sometimes I feel anger, but most of the time it's really the guilt of not being able to save her, or um, the fear that another one of my siblings will pass. And so anger is a big part of that grief that a lot of people have, especially when they don't realize that they are going through grief. When you're not educated about grief, when no one tells you, hey, you just witnessed this. I witnessed someone get shot and killed, when I was 18 years old. And that was before I even went to college. And I went to therapy. Thank God that my family believes in therapy. But as a young Black woman, I wouldn't have known that it was okay for me to be angry at that trauma, at the loss that my brother experienced because he lost his best friend that night. Um, and even now, as I tell you guys about this, it replays in my head. I still remember the night that it happened. Rest in peace, Sherry Soft. But that anger is still there. Like, how could someone do that? How could someone take someone's life? And when I think about being born into poverty, being born into the projects, Central District in Seattle, Washington, I think about all of those experiences, lived experiences that my parents and my grandparents went through, that grief, that bereavement that was in their bodies that they didn't know that they could release because they weren't educated about grief. Um, and I encourage you, if you're angry, use it in a positive way. If you could take that anger and, like I'm in a way doing, turn it into a passion. I think that a lot more people in marginalized communities would be able to really utilize this grief anger in a more productive way. And I know that because I am a lived experience overcomer and survivor of it. And here we have depression. Depression. Depression is, I don't feel like brushing my teeth. I don't feel like taking a shower. I don't feel like answering my phone. I want to sleep all day. I don't want to be here. It's hopelessness. It's sadness. And it happens when you lose something that you loved. You love. So I encourage you, if you're experiencing grief and you are depressed, please reach out to your local community. Please reach out. I know here in Austin, Texas, Black Mamas ATX has been a great resource for me. I'm able to do free counseling through their program. And so I encourage any woman who is listening to the sound of my voice to reach out for help if you've experienced a loss. There are resources in the Austin community. Integral care is one of them. Acceptance and hope. I think that I know that in my prolonged grief, acceptance and hope is how I live, especially as my family gets closer to my sister's court case, which if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But my hope is in that my sister will get justice. I can't disclose too much, but my hope is that my sister will get justice of what happened to her. And so that helps me really move through that part of my grief a lot better because it gives me a sense of purpose in the fact that she is no longer here. But hope and acceptance is a part of grief, and you can feel that today and tomorrow, feel anger, and that's okay too. Okay. And so now I will present a wonderful video presentation of Carmen, my mother, a bereaved mother. And she's going to share with you her personal experience with grief.
One day I couldn't take it no more, and I just walked into a doctor's office and told him I need to see a counselor. I need help. From what I know, there's a stigma on counseling. We don't talk to counselors. We don't do this. We handle it. We're strong. We're strong women. We're strong women of color. We're this, we're that. But it gets to a point where it's like, I need help. Like, I needed help. I couldn't do it alone. I needed help. And I just wanted to be invisible. It was at a point where I wouldn't get dressed. I wouldn't clean up. I was angry and mad at everybody. I was mad. Thinking back on, I was sick. It felt like there was another person inside my body trying to get out. That's how I would describe it to my counselor. It felt like I was being bound. And through counseling and my family, the once a week, just talking everything out. She said I'm a grief for my daughter. I just am. But learning how to do everyday tasks to live, that's what she helped me get through. And my family. Just to get up and go for a walk. Just to get up. Not to push myself. Just to get up when you're fit. Because it's like this. I feel like there's a line. And then sometimes I have this high. Just high of life. And I just be happy, and it's a good day, and I'm excited, and then one day I'm just not feeling good, and it feels like I'm being dropped, bam, you know. Those were my worst days. I just want to be. I don't want it to be like this, up and then down. I'd rather for me to have a bump in the road and then come back down. I want it to be level, but I know there's going to be ups and downs, you know. And I'm finally getting to that point where I'm not dropping or I'm not falling, you know. It's been a long road. It's been almost 4 years. And I tried to rush the process, and you can't rush the process of grief. You can't rush, believe. I've never known a person to have depression, anxiety, PSTD, and panic attacks. I thought anxiety and panic attacks were all in one, but they're all different, and I'm learning as being in counseling how to control and how to change my thought process and how to redirect my mind when I go through different mental stages of my grief. At first, I didn't care. I didn't care at all. I didn't care. I was just, it's whatever. I wanted to die. I feel like I failed my daughter. The guilt. I'm still sad, you know, I still grieve, but I'm able to get up and take a walk. I'm able to take a shower. I'm able to clean my house. I'm able to enjoy little moments in my life, you know, and find, you know, some happiness. There was no hope. There was no happiness. And if you would have told me at the beginning that it's going to get better, I wouldn't have believed it. And I would be like, why would it get better? Why would I want it to get better? My daughter's not here. Says that to somebody. So basically you're telling me just to live my life and forget about my child? Just made me angry. But now I see what people are saying. I have to live. I'm a healthy African American Black woman. I'm healthy. I need to learn how to live and navigate through this grief, and that's what I'm learning. And I'm nowhere near, but I'm nowhere where I was. You know, I still have situations. I still have problems, but like I said, through counseling, medication management, exercise, I've learned to go to the gym and exercise. That made me feel really good. Trying to eat healthy, you know, and trying to get sleep, it works. It makes my body feel better. You know, my heart and my mind still knows, but my body's like, oh, okay, you know. So if my body and my mind feels better, you know, my body feels better, my mind feels better, and I'm able to get up, and I don't have these aches and pains that I would have that comes with depression. My name is Carmen, and like I said, I was diagnosed with severe grief and severe community anxiety, severe depression, and panic attacks.
Doesn't make it any less painful. Did you know that 40% of bereaved people will suffer a form of anxiety? 70% of them have an increased chance of death after the loss of a close spouse or family member. People have noted that they have an increase of stress levels after the loss of a loved one. And yes, pets are included. And I just wanted to send my condolences out to anyone who has experienced a loss due to COVID-19. I understand that we're in the middle of a pandemic and there are many families who have suffered the loss of a loved one or a job or even their identity. So I just encourage you, please take care of yourself and keep your family protected mentally, spiritually, emotionally. It's really important that you take heed. According to CDC.gov, 5.3 million people have lost their lives globally. So we're going to shift a little bit and I'm going to talk a little bit about core values. And core values are the things that really help me to stay really in the stage of hope and acceptance, I would say. Um, Core values are the things that you really just identify with, that speak to the true you, the things that keep you grounded, the things that keep you um, um, hopeful and intentional, and that lights your fire, right? For me, my core values, as you can see, is my family, um, God, and education. Those are my core values. I think it's really important that I keep those things close to me because they help me really navigate life and navigate single motherhood even now, as I am living with grief and overcoming it day by day. And so these core values are things that really keep me encouraged. So right now, I just want to take a pause and ask you, what are your core values? What are things that make you jump for joy, or things that mean something to you, that keep you planted here on earth? What are your core values? Think about those things as you mourn, as you grieve, as you go through this life, figuring things out like we all are. What are your core values? So emotions can either raise our value or lower it. Um, I just say take back your power. Our deepest values stir the strongest emotions in us. So emotions are good. I know in our community they say, well, don't cry. Why are you crying? Don't cry. No, 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 no. Chantier is here to tell you, cry. Cry as much as you need to. Cry in your shower. Cry when you go to sleep. Just don't stay in those negative emotions. Release them, accept them, and move forward. You can do it. I promise you. So here's another picture of my beautiful family. Um, touch a little bit about self-medicating in the Black community. My whole family smokes marijuana. It's legalized in the state of Washington, and so that's where I'm from. And so it's legal that they utilize medical marijuana. But for me, the self-medicating did not work. I had to move away from home in order to really gain my sobriety, and I'm still in recovery, and I take my recovery very seriously. Is it easy? No. Is it always perfect? No. Do I have the urges? Yes. Am I fighting? Yeah, for sure. Well, I continue to fight, most definitely, because I know my core values and I know what means the most to me. And I'm educating myself enough to know that I'm not alone in this grief and in this sadness that I feel some days. And so it makes it a little easier for me to stir away from those things, because I realize, like, it didn't help me. It only hindered me. It only made my anxiety worse, which led to more panic. And for me, in my personal experience, it just never worked out. I abused alcohol for a long time in my early college years, partied a lot, used a lot of alcohol. And so I had to release those things because they didn't help me. They only hurt me. But I know that a lot of people in the Black community, and even not even just the Black community, worldwide, in any community, people who go through any form of mental illness, can self-medicate numerous things, not even just substances. People can self-medicate with working out too much. People can self-medicate with um, sleep. Even sleep can be so soothing, right? But you got to wake up one day and you got to go outside and you got to brush your teeth. So I say anything that's taking away from your core values, and not adding to you, is something that I would say is a negative self-medication. And so here we are at our affirmation. Yay, I love affirmations. And so right now I am going to do a quick affirmation, and I want everyone to plant their feet on the ground and just put their hands on their lap. Breathe again. You know I love breathing. So breathe deeply 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to say, Chantier, whatever your name is. And we're going to name 3 things. And you can grab it off the list that I have here. So Chantier, am valuable, important, lovable, and healthy. If you have a piece of paper, you can also write it down. You can write your affirmation down so that you are encouraged and that you remember that it is your birthright to be here. It is your birthright to heal. And it is your birthright to overcome and survive grief. It is your birthright. It is our birthright. Therapy. I encourage therapy. I love my therapist. I encourage attending the sessions. Sometimes I miss them. My life can get hectic with 2 boys. But I had to get the grief out of my body and I needed to release. So therapy was one of the ways that I was able to do that and continue to do that whenever I remember to get on my therapy sessions. But therapy is a really good outlet. And I'm talking a little bit about true pride. True pride is just the genuine pride in your abilities and yourself. And confidence just kind of exudes naturally. False pride is really shallow external measures of how I see myself. And so I now operate out of true pride. I refuse to be anybody that is not my truest self. And I encourage you guys to do the same thing as you guys navigate grief and navigate the complexities of grief as you are processing the loss of anything in your life. Coping. And so, what I do, how I handle my daily triggers, my therapist taught me, is to, of course, put my feet on the ground, breathe deeply. And sometimes I just stare at one object. So, I have my water bottle here. And if it's sitting on my desk, I'll just kind of just look at the water bottle for about 30 seconds in order to bring my panic down or my anxiety down. Of course, take a nice hot cold shower, and as I said before, cry, 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 cry. Crying, there's nothing wrong with crying. And transitions can be hard for anybody. Um, me, I know I am Miss Change, Miss Transitions. That's what they call me. I'm not afraid of it. I embrace it. I needed it even. Um, So I have a website, ChantiaJohnson.com, and I want to help really encourage and empower you to embrace change and embrace these transitions in life and overcome and live again. Vista V, you can do it. I'm telling you, I am doing it. My mother is doing it. My siblings are doing it. And it's a daily battle, but you can survive grief and you can overcome. And the last thing I would say is just to write down 3 to 5 changes you've experienced this year. Um, One thing can be you've been waking up earlier or you bought a calendar. Anything that makes you feel good about yourself. Write those 3 to 5 things down right now and get ready to ask me whatever questions that you have as I'm a lived experience survivor of grief, of sibling loss, of identity loss, of job loss. Lord, how many jobs have I been through? But I'm a survivor and I'm an overcomer, and I want you to be the same. Um, you can do it because I am. Thank you.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. Man. Chantier, a few words came to mind. I listened to you, and I just have to tell you what a resilient, wise, insightful, I jotted down some words, authentic young woman, powerful. The future is yours, baby. You are amazing, amazing, beautiful young woman. So we have just a few minutes for questions. And so I had asked in the chat for you guys to put your questions in the chat if you have any. I think there have been some questions floating around, and you guys have been so good, and we've created such community that you are answering the questions for each other, and that's beautiful. That's the way it's supposed to work. One question we had was, what do you do to help release grief from your body? as sometimes the energy of grief makes us feel so heavy in our bodies. And you
Yeah.
shared a little bit about that.
Yes, that is very true. I go to the gym, I work out. I literally, like on days where I feel that immense sadness, I channel it into like releasing the cortisol, the stress hormone in your brain. And so working out not only physically gets me out of the house and out of my bed, but it also, it's really releasing all that stress in my body. I go sit in the sauna. The Y, it has really good memberships. So I know a lot of people may not financially be able to get a membership, but the Y they subsidize. So you can get a membership for your family. They have childcare certain hours of the day. And if you have kids, you leave your kid in the childcare and you go work out for about an hour. I think they take care of the kids for about 2 hours. Go work out, go for a walk. My mom comes into town from Seattle. We go to Barton Creek, we go walk. I don't let my mom sit in the house ever. She has to get out the house because that's what's helped me to really see that the world is beautiful still. My mom said one time, and I know this is, but my mom said one time, I didn't see color. I didn't even look at the sky, right? And I think it's important that we start to look at the world around us when we're going through those bad days. So that's really what I do to get that out of my body.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I do want to acknowledge and share, I do believe I saw in the list of people participating that your mom is on the line. And I would just like to share with you, Carmen, thank you. Thank you for sharing your daughter with us. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. It must be extremely difficult. And we're just grateful that you guys are getting the support that you need and you're giving back. You're willing to share and talk with other people. And so we just ask for continued blessings for you and your family as you continue to grow and heal and work through the experiences that you have had with grief.
Thank you.
Any other questions that we have? I have a ton of questions, but this ain't about me, right? Any other questions? You guys feel free to raise your hand and hopefully we can get some help with seeing that. I can't see everybody because I'm maneuvering too many different things. But if you raise your hand, we'll ask that you're unmuted and can join the conversation. While we're waiting, I would just like to acknowledge that you recognize grief in many different ways. Sometimes we do just think of grief as just losing a person, but there are so many other things that we grieve in addition to that. And I know that during COVID, there's so much that we've lost and so much grieving. I keep telling everybody, I feel like we're going to grieve for years because there's been so many losses in so many different ways throughout this COVID history. So I'm sorry, someone was going to speak and I want to short you. And if you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Is this for me? Hello?
Yes,
Mom.
go ahead.
Hi. I really didn't have a question. I just wanted to share and thank you guys for this community. It's really hard. And when you're in your grief, it actually is an illness and a sickness. And I didn't know because I'd never been through it. I just thankful to people, my family and my kids and my therapist, because I was really sick. I was really sad and really sick and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was really angry. I wanted to be invisible. So when I went out into the world, I wouldn't get dressed. I just didn't want people to see me. I'm still going through it. I'm sad today. Tomorrow's my daughter's 4-year angel anniversary. I just want to say it's real and please get help. Please, if you can. Don't sit and be by yourself. There are so many people out here that you can talk to. There's so many communities that we don't know about. Yeah, it's still a touchy subject. I'm sitting here in my pajamas, not wanting to get up today. I want to cry. I just want to thank you guys for everything. My daughter, she was my youngest. She was a twin. She went to the hospital with a cold and ended up leaving. I'm going to tell, from mold in her lungs from the hospital. And they told me she was coming home. So my body wasn't prepared for the passing of her. I was doing my hospital training. I was doing trach care. I was doing everything that they asked me to do. And at the end of the day, I was lied to. My daughter went into cardiac arrest due to the mold in her lungs. That was what happened at the hospital. And I was devastated. I felt like I didn't speak for her. I felt like I didn't ask enough questions. What could I have done different? I felt like I failed her, you know. But I'm learning just as of today that, Carmen, there was nothing you could do. It was not your fault. It's not your fault. But I still, as a mother, I feel terrible. And I just want people to know that it's real. Mental health is real. The anger was ridiculous. I would be angry with everybody, didn't know why. I'm happy that my family started to see me and see that I had issues. And I just want people to know that you guys are not alone. And thank you. Do I mute it?
Thank you so much for sharing that, Carmen. And we will hold you in our thoughts and prayers, and know that there are 122 people on this call, and that we see you, we hear you, and we hold you virtually. We cannot imagine as a parent how challenging it is for you. And just know that while we're not there and we don't know you personally, we've heard your journey, and you are in our thoughts and prayers, you and your family.
Any other questions? I'm excited to answer some questions.
I think Cynthia, did you have your hand up still? Did you have a
Let's
question?
see.
If you can
Well,
unmute yourself.
Am I still on mute?
No, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay. I don't know. Miss Chantier, it's gonna be really, I'm sure that this is a loaded question because it's a lot, but I know you said there are so many kinds of grief. And I think mine started when I got divorced, and it was horrific. And that was the type of grief. And then I moved cross country back to Texas, and I had to deal with jobs and all of that. And then my my daughter died, and I found my daughter dead one morning, and she was staying with me, and it was so hard, and I just thought I was going to lose my mind. And then like 3 or 4 months after that, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was crazy. I was like, what in the world is going on? And then at my job, I kept working because, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be mean, but there are a lot of, so many black non-black women are able to, when they go through like brain surgery and stuff, they're able to stay home and to heal. And because I'm single, I didn't have that luxury. So I had to get back to work, and still was grieving for my daughter. And then it was really, really hard. And then I was finally moved into a section where I loved my job so much, and my supervisor left. And I didn't realize, I guess, how much I loved her, how much I cared. But even though I was young, I got, what is it called? Um when you break out like all over your back. Normally I think it's an old person.
Oh, hi.
Older. It's
Hi.
well, yes, it's like hives, but it's another word starts with an S.
Shingles.
Shingles. And I got shingles all over.
Mm.
And I think it was, and because I was holding all this stuff inside, and it was awful because for years and years and years, I was holding it inside, all of these traumas, and it was really bad. And at one point at my job, I sometimes I would be tasked to go and get someone, and they were in a dorm, but they were asleep when I got up there. And I kept thinking, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my job, because they would say, oh, she's just asleep. Go wake her up. And I just couldn't do it, because I felt like if I went to wake her up, she wasn't going to wake up like my daughter did. And so I was so scared. So I understood when you said that can be this prolonged drama. I mean, trauma, because I just had one after the other, after the other, after the other. And it's been really, really hard.
Yeah.
But I just want to know, how can I find some joy? Because joy seems to be something like it's eluding me when I used to be full of it.
Right. I think, first of all, I totally want to validate that PTSD, right? That you're reliving that trauma over and over again, even in different scenarios. As for joy or finding joy, my advice would be figure out what makes you happy naturally. When I was trying to force joy, I would get more depressed. But when I woke up and made breakfast, like I make pancakes from scratch now because that brings me joy. It takes me from being overwhelmed in the morning, anxious, irritable, to focusing on something that I enjoy. I love seeing my kids sit down and eat their whole plate of pancakes. So just simplify. Simplifying it won't make it as intensive or make it feel like it's so far away to obtain. You know what I mean? So I would encourage you, even today, write down 5 things that you really truly enjoy. It could be something that's free. My mom likes to color in a coloring book. It could be, I don't know, styling your friend, telling her, hey, let's just go shop. Let's just go shopping. And I'm going to pick out some things that I think you would like. Do something outside of yourself that not only gives back, but brings you joy. You know what I mean? And don't overthink it. Overthinking is easy when you're dealing with any type of mental health. So just do it. That's what I would encourage you to do. If you want to reach out, I have a website, chantiajohnson.com. More than welcome to email me. And just, we can figure out a way that you can do things day by day that brings you joy without feeling overwhelmed or spending excess funds. It doesn't mean you have to spend money. It doesn't even mean you have to be around people, but you have to identify those 5 things in order for you to feel like you're filled with joy. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am, it does. Because I even found a group that you can only go and be in the group if you lost a child.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't have lost your mom, your uncle, whatever, only a child. But it was hard for me because most of the people in there were husband and wives, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't have a partner.
Right.
And quite a few of them had other children, and that
Right.
was my only child.
Okay. So look, let's get specific. Let's find a group for grieving mothers or bereaved mothers, of single children. I mean, they have all of these groups available, and I would love to help you find a group. I'm really big on helping people find those type of resources, even online. Facebook's a really good resource. My mom is in a bereaved group there. My sister was disabled, so my mom has to identify with grieving mothers, bereaved mothers of disabled children, because sometimes people don't respect the fact that she had a disability. And so you just have to find your specific need, right? Sometimes you don't need that generalized grief group. You definitely got to find that specific group that you can identify with and not feel so alone in that. So yeah.
Thank you, Chantier.
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
we get to one more question, and then I know that
Thank
our
you very
time
much.
is well spent. And thank you, Cynthia, for your question and for sharing. And I know folks are going to leave, but I see Felicia with her hand up, and I would love for you to be able to ask your question.
Okay, yes. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I mean, I'm really encouraged and empowered. My question is, as I heard your mother speak, talking about where she is at this very moment, I'm in a place where my daughter reached out to me about 3:45 this morning. She has a dual diagnosis. She does self-medicate, and I'm wondering, how can I help her? I have placed before her all the resources that I know. I still carry her on my insurance. I talk to her, I try to encourage her, but she just will not take advantage of the resources. I mean, as a person, who you have your mom with you, y'all are working through things together, and then being her daughter, how can, from your perspective, what can I do to get my daughter, encourage her to really use the resources? I've even offered to go with her, but even that makes her feel uncomfortable. So that's where I am right now. She wants to come stay with me for a few days. And I'm like, Lord, I am really not in a space mentally or emotionally to deal with her, but I know she needs help.
Right.
What would you advise?
So for me, because I would say, because I'm a logical thinker, right? And my mom's more emotional. So when I was encouraging my mom to do things, she did not understand how I could, quote unquote, move on or forget my little sister. But we're just different in that, because I found that me being logical helped me to live day by day. So for you and your daughter's situation, I would say honor that she's not ready, continue to put the resources in front of her, but realize every person is going to move at their own pace when it comes to substance abuse. I mean, I still have to go to groups where on Clubhouse where people are talking about recovery. It is not easy. I'm 28 years old and I'm still battling my early 20s decisions. And so really it's just validating her, knowing that her journey is where God has her, and encouraging her. And another thing, I'm gonna repeat this again and again, do things she enjoys. So when she does come with you, like, I have to breathe deeply when I'm with my mother. Like, that's my best friend, but we butt heads a lot, right? And so sometimes my mom knows I don't talk, like I won't talk, and she's a talker. So I'll have to like literally create that boundary, like, Mom, like I'm not in the mood right now to talk, you know? And of course it'll hurt her feelings again, she's emotional, but we've learned how to honor each other's boundaries through being real and being transparent with each other. You can't sugarcoat things. Show her the reality of addiction. Show her really what happens when you're hanging out with the wrong people. And I'm gonna give this truth. I have 2 children out of decisions I've made because I was not mentally stable, right? Remind her that you love her and she's gonna be okay. But in order for her to move towards her dreams and her goals, she's gonna have to one day take that step towards recovery. And hopefully that answers your question. But that's what I would say, is just let her be her and you be you. And I think it'll fall into place eventually, because even my youngest siblings and my older siblings, they don't do counseling, only me and my mother. So that's 2 people out of like 10 people who are actually actively trying to seek out help. So just know it happens, and she's not alone, most definitely not alone in that, not being ready.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, good people. I think
Okay.
we are at our time. Thank you guys for staying on. And Chantier, thank you so much. And Ms. Carmen, just for sharing your knowledge and your insight with us. And many thanks to all of you for joining us today. Again, grief is a heavy topic, but the more we talk about it and the more we normalize it, we know we're not all going to be here forever. And so we have to learn how to address, how to be transparent, and how to share when we're hurting and when we're going through. So thank you, Chantier, for your beautiful presentation, for your wonderful spirit, for your wisdom, and for being willing to share with us here this afternoon, or now this morning still. So thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing about the great things that you're doing in the future, and for you continuing to connect with us here at the conference.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Guys, remember to do your CEUs, do your evaluations. Let Chantier show her some love. Let her know what you thought, any recommendations for any things that she can do differently. You are a young woman who is out there doing it, sharing it with us, even older people. I learned so much from you today. So thank you. And everyone, do your CEUs and your general evaluation. Make sure and click the link in the chat so that you can get your CEUs. And again, thank you all. And now I think it's time to go groove, jam, and eat from lunch. So let's go get it, and we'll see you guys during the lunch hour and the award ceremony. Take care.